Hello and welcome to Wimbledon Unfiltered with Nick Kyrgios, brought to you by talkSPORT and Good Trouble. I'm Gordon Smart, the YTS Jim White. And joining me today, of course, is Nick Kyrgios, 7-time ATP winner. All right, Nick?
Gordon, good to see you again.
Good to see you, my man. Right, our guest today is not only a big star of football, he's a wonderful co-commentator. In fact, he's the most enthusiastic man on the planet. He's like the ice cream aisle of the supermarket, this guy. He's phenomenal. It's Sunderland, St Johnstone and Scotland star, Ally McCoist.
Gordon, great to see you. Nick, nice to see you, mate.
Ali, how are you?
Lovely
Good
to
see
see
you.
you. All good. So make sure you like the talkSPORT page and subscribe on YouTube. Right, Nick, getting started. I think it is the hottest day, 35 degrees. Is that a help or a hindrance, particularly to the Brits playing?
I think look, there's enough pressure on the Brits to do well, during these couple of weeks, and it's been a good starting day for the Brits. Only one going down so far. Fernley played Fonseca, which is not really a surprise. Obviously, Fonseca is going to take over the tennis world pretty soon, but the Brits they've come out flying, and I think, look, it probably helps them. They grew up on grass. Not many players are comfortable on the grass, so when it's hot, I think the Brits do love it.
Now, here's a quick question, if I may ask you. See, at Wimbledon in particular, is this a good tournament to play the Brits because of the pressure on them?
Look, I think, the Brits don't mind playing at home. I think, Jack Draper is going to he's going to contend for Grand Slams, and Wimbledon's probably his best chance to do that. But I think having that home crowd is special. Most of these guys train at Wimbledon, and they're around it a lot, so it's like playing in their backyard. And I think, most of the time they do deal with the pressure pretty well. It's a great question because I actually didn't enjoy playing in my backyard so much.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure, and sometimes you put too much pressure on yourself. But right now they've handled it pretty good.
Alcaraz, again, what a performer he is. Incredible athlete. But, Ali's talk, the game's still going on as we speak. By the time this goes out, it'll be finished. But
Yep.
how difficult is it when you have a proper test in your first game? Is that kind of tricky to carry through, physically for the rest of the tournament?
Yeah, I think historically Alcaraz gets better as the tournament goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those earlier rounds, he's not also like as locked in as he would be later on in the tournament. But Fognini, we don't know how much tennis he's got left, and he's no shock to an upset. He loves playing, he loves being the underdog, and he's beaten guys like Rafa and Nadal before. So to say that he's giving Alcaraz some problems isn't surprising. But as I said, the temperature's hot. Alcaraz's first match, the expectations of trying to come back and win and defend that title, it's not easy. It's not simple. That's why we love sport. It's not just played on the paper. So, Alcaraz, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets it done, but Fognini can give anyone trouble. So
Would it be wrong to say you see more upsets here earlier than most tournaments?
Yeah, you're probably right. Historically you see upsets early because the top players put so much pressure on themselves to perform. I've crashed out here a bunch of times early because, the week before I'm trying to do everything so right, so diligently, and I get out there and I just trip over myself because it's just too much pressure.
But I think that's about you, though, isn't it? Like, I think when you try to be too professional, it removes the bit that makes you special.
Yeah, I think Gordon's known me for 2 weeks. And he's already got that.
Don't be that guy. It's not you. But I
know.
if that translates to your game, Ali, right? You played with so many characters. Gaza's the obvious one who springs out. But if you try and control him, do you get the best out of him, if you know what I mean? If you suppress that magic.
Absolutely. It's a great question, Gordon, and I always remember Walter, who's the best manager I ever worked with, Nick, and he said something. He was talking to, believe it or not, Billy Connolly, the Scottish comedian, the great Scottish comedian, without doubt the greatest comedian ever lived, in my opinion. But anyway, that's another story. And Billy Connolly was talking to Walter, and he asked him about Gascoigne. Gascoigne was tremendous footballer, but different. And he said to Walter, he said, "How are you getting on with Gascoigne?" And Walter said to him, "Yeah," he said, "he's this, that, and he's next, the next thing, but he's a wonderful player." And Billy Connolly said to him, "Remember," he said, "you've got to live with the talent, right? Don't try and do anything to suppress it." Yeah. He says, "Let the talent live, let the talent breathe, within reason, but don't try and curtail it. Just let it go." And Walter did, and I honestly believe, you're asking that question, I think we get the best footballer out of Gascoigne throughout his career.
100%.
He was a magician, absolute magician. What a footballer! So I mean, and it's funny because particularly with management and team events, particularly football, somebody will say the manager and the coach has got to treat everybody the same, Nick, but they don't.
No.
I don't care what MD says. They don't. You might have the same rules and regulations, but people are different.
Yeah.
So you can't really treat people the same. You couldn't treat Gascoigne the same way as you could treat the next, Big Goffey, for example, or something like that. So But you've got to be clever about it, and
Yeah.
Walter handled it brilliantly.
They say the same about Andy Goldstein at talkSPORT, don't they?
Oh,
You know, you
that
got
man's a
much-
law in himself.
How would you have
But we
managed
love him.
Nick? How would you manage Nick? You know,
With some
or
degree,
coach them?
with some degree of difficulty. But it's the same thing. It's the same thing, though. You've got
Yeah.
to let him go.
Yeah.
Because once you bring him in here and not let him come out and expand, you're not going to get the same person. You're not going to get the same player. You're not going to
see
get the
this.
same talent. That's my bet. We just
That's my
spoke
favourite
about it.
photo up on the wall.
Is that
Yeah.
your favourite picture?
I've had a quick look, and
Yeah.
there's some fantastic pics up there, Nick. But that's my favourite as well.
Well, that's what I'm most famous for.
Well,
that's why I'm here talking.
Which
so.
one was that then, Nick, for anybody who doesn't know in talkSPORT?
I played against Nadal in Indian Wells, and that racket, that nearly went over the fence. I got in trouble for that. I got in trouble for that.
Ali, here's a little question for you. A very quick quiz. I know you do this a lot on talkSPORT,
Yes.
right? I'm going to give you a multiple choice
Yes.
option here.
Okay.
Nick Kyrgios is the most fined man in tennis.
Mm-hmm.
Do his fines, similar to you when you were at Rangers right now,
I love it how we're laughing. Like,
the most fined man in tennis. Was it
Imagine having that in your CV in the first place. I love it.
was it £250,000, £500,000, or £1 million? What level of fee has he paid in fines?
Oh, it can't be £1 million. I'm going to go right in the middle.
You're going to go £500,000?
Aye.
Nick Kyrgios?
it's $250,000.
That's it, right. Great, yeah.
That's in GBP though. That's pounds sterling.
It's about $500,000. It's
Half a million.
AUD.
Yeah.
And
I'm not proud of it.
how many of those fines do you think you deserved?
All of them.
yeah.
Right, let's put it back on Ali
All of
McCoist.
them.
Alistair McCoist,
Yes.
what's the most you were fined in your playing career?
Oh,
Bearing in mind I worked in newspapers, I know the answer to this.
Graham,
Right?
Graham used to fine me on a regular basis.
Mr. Sunis?
Yeah, I used to get fined a couple of weeks' wages. I remember I got fined a couple of weeks' wages with Gerante. And we won the league 3 weeks later up in Aberdeen. And young Ferguson get fined as well, 2 weeks' wages. So we'd won the league, we're coming back in the bus for Aberdeen. And I was a little bit older than Fergie and Gerante, and he came back and he pulled the two of them up and he said, he's obviously in a good mood because they won the league. And he says, right, you two, he says, well done. He said, you can get your money back if you stay out of trouble for 6 months. Right? And they were like delighted, and he called me up, he says, you can he says, you can get your money back if you get married. He did, he said, you can get your 2 weeks. I said, keep it. And that was it. So I never got my 2 weeks money.
Got married 3 times.
So he owes me double. Good point, Gordon.
Thank you
Just
very
the twice, calm down there. Just
sorry. I was thinking ahead.
A lot of
a
inside jokes.
crystal ball there.
I know. Nick, I should say, right, I got fined when I worked in newspapers because we worked with talkSPORT very closely, and I had the record for missing the most consecutive flights from City to Scotland.
Well, that's why I took a train today.
That's why I took the train. Ali broke my record.
Oh, yeah.
7 consecutive missed flights.
Incredible.
Mr. McCoy.
Incredible.
Anyway, yeah, naughty behaviour. Right, let's talk about the tennis because that's why we're here. Taking us through some of these then, Nick, today. You've already mentioned a couple of them, but big shocks, Medvedev.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Medvedev, I think today was the first ever time he lost first round of a Grand Slam. And Benjamin Bonzi's someone that's a dark horse. You know, no one really wants to play him. I've played him at a Grand Slam. He's a tough competitor. So, and he's actually very handy on grass. You know, I always knew that was going to be a tricky match for Medvedev. But, you know, seeing a seed like that fall on day one is obviously a big shock to the tennis world. Obviously, Tsitsipas as well. You know, these are guys that we look at as contenders for Grand Slams. And going down in round one is never easy. So, you know, I look at those. There's a couple big matches. Obviously, you said Alcaraz is still on the court at the moment. You watched him play. I think he'll come through that. But I'm not sure if we've got an update on Holger Rune. He was 2 sets to love up, and then that was 2 sets all. You know, Nicholas Jarry is, you know, he's 6'7", big serve. He's very dangerous. I think he's made the quarterfinals here before, so that's a dangerous one as well. And look, the one of the day for me that I'd say is one to watch is Taylor Fritz versus Mpechi Perricard. You know, this guy has the biggest serve on planet. You know, he serves
How fast is it just now?
240 kilometers an hour. So like this guy's serve is dangerous. So that one there's probably the one to watch. I mean, on the women's side, the seeds have come through pretty easily. The only one to go down is Ostapenko, but pretty much the rest of the seeds, Sabalenka got through quite easily. But the seeds have had pretty smooth sailing on the women's side.
Do you know what I was noticing about in the women's side? I thought this was a pretty telling fact. I don't think Andy's retained Wimbledon title since 2016. Serena Williams.
A lot of names, isn't there, on the trophy?
You know, and I thought that was quite, significant.
Well, saying that, I mean, I feel like the women's game right now, especially on the grass, it's quite open. You couldn't really tell. I don't think anyone has a clear favourite on the grass. You know, there's so many upsets, but, you know, apart from Sabalenka, Coco Gauff trying to find her feet, but I mean, as you said, the women's game is kind of crying out for someone to kind of take a stranglehold of it and really be dominating the tour. But I think there might be a new champion this year again, to be honest.
There's so much attention on Raducanu in this country, isn't there? She got off to an amazing start a few years ago, but had a bumpy ride since, a lot of other trouble. But she's also got a bit of a love interest from what we gather, Nick.
I don't know.
Come on, tell us.
No, I don't know. I think it's a love triangle. I think Draper, Alcaraz, and Raducanu. They're fighting over Raducanu. I think. I'm not sure. But
this is the stuff we want.
This is the good stuff.
This is why I'm here, Nick.
Does that make a distraction for her, or do you think she's completely focused on the tennis?
Yeah, I think the
she
outside.
Looks happy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who's making it happy. I don't know, but I'm like, I just think that the tennis world loves a love story, and they love to try and put two together. But look, Raducanu, I think she's the number one British female tennis player at the moment, so she's doing fairly well. Obviously, winning a Grand Slam at 19 is never easy. It comes with a lot of expectation on the outside world, but. As long as she's happy, I mean, as you said, there's so much pressure that comes with being the number one player and playing at Wimbledon. So hopefully she can find her feet. I mean, imagine her and Jack Draper winning the women's title and the men's title, and that would be something. And
it's not beyond the realms of possibility. Jack, I don't know, Ali, if I said to you, I worked with Jack when he was a younger lad.
Ah, right.
And it's amazing, similar sort of thing to Andy, where he's just suddenly filled out, and become a big, strong operator now. But he's fifth seed, right, this time around?
Yeah.
World number 4, isn't he?
World number 4, yeah. He's just a great athlete, big lefty, and I think he does have natural instincts on the grass. I think now making that run at the US Open in the semi-final, and then I think he needed to get some of those results under his belt. So now he truly believes that he can contend, and he can take it to guys like Sinner and Alcaraz. I mean, these guys, they play with so much confidence, especially best out of 5 sets, potentially playing for 4 or 5 hours. I think Draper needed to get his physicality up, but he's a genuine threat, in my opinion.
I find the physicality thing quite interesting. You mentioned 6'7". What they say in football, Ali, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the amount of fight in the dog. And you played with a few angry wee terriers in your time. But in tennis, Nick, what, you 6'4"?
Yeah.
How much of an advantage can that be, that extra power, that extra strength you talk about?
I mean, I think if you look at the average height of the people in the top 10, it's about 6'2". So, I mean, look, it does help. Like, you got a big serve, but these guys move so well. You look at Alcaraz and Sinner, these guys are so fast, and they move out of the corner as well. And I'm 30 years old, and I've, had a lot of late nights in the pub that they haven't had. So I definitely can feel that out of the corners. I can feel the beers for the next day. But, these guys are such great movers. So, the game's... they hit the ball so hard, but the courts have slowed down. So there's more emphasis on these guys moving side to side, and they're freaks in nature, honestly.
Is it such an obvious thing to say, Nick, that the biggest advantage in height would be the serve?
Definitely. I think you look at some of the players that have come and gone on the tour. The taller they are, the biggest serve, but genuinely they lack in movement, they lack on returns. Where Alcaraz, Sinner, Federer, these guys have all court games where someone like me sometimes I can't. Put a ball in the court.
That was your big asset, though, wasn't it? Yourself.
My serve, it was, Well, it is. I'm still playing.
Still playing. I'll talk about that. But, I mean, what were you getting up to? How many kilometres an hour?
About 230, 235. Yeah.
What about you, Ali? What have you got in the locker?
Not quite that.
No.
I used to play in
underarm.
Used to play in the clay up in White Moss and East Kilbride. I'm not sure I reached that speed. I've got to be quite honest with you.
Were you a decent tennis player?
I was an average, very average. I've got to be very careful what I say. Some of the boys will be watching this. No, I was very average at tennis, but I loved it. That was in the summer, and in the summer when the football season finished, bang, tennis, golf. That was it. And during the winter months, it was football.
Who's the best? Alan Hansen was a good tennis player, wasn't he?
Excellent golfer as well. Gary Mack, excellent golfer.
Yeah.
David Cooper was a brilliant tennis player.
Was he?
Oh, brilliant tennis
Looked
player.
like a tennis player.
Oh, he did. He got a bit of class about him,
Yeah. He had the right clothes for
He
that.
did. He
Unlike you in your shell suit.
He looked the part, didn't he?
Tesco bag.
My wee knobbly knees. I could never handle it.
And again, looking back at the tennis there, you're talking about I think that's a really good point Ali makes, actually, about how many different names are on the trophy. Do you think that era of dominance might be over in women's tennis after the Williams sisters?
It's an interesting question, because I think, it's genuinely the same culprits at the semi-finals. You got, Sabalenka's been so dominant now for the last couple of years. Coco Gauff's finding her feet. I mean, Swiatek, her dominance at the French Open, has been there as well. But I think we are falling into that kind of dominance on the men's side a little bit now. I mean, I think every tournament, as long as Sinner and Alcaraz are healthy, we even see guys like Djokovic falling to these guys pretty much every week. So they just move with such confidence now, and I think my call would be Sabalenka. I think she's really got the potential to take over the tour on every surface. I mean, she serves amazing, she hits big, she's got good intensity, and she's got that energy where I feel like when she walks onto the court, she's already winning these matches. Girls don't really believe that they can win. So I think Sabalenka has the potential to be that dominant player.
Talking about dominance, will we ever see, or have we ever seen, and please tell me, dominance on a surface like Nadal and Clay? I mean,
I don't think we'll ever see that again.
It was obscene, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that was ridiculous. I had the chance of playing Nadal on clay courts in Rome one year, and I couldn't walk the next day. Like, I'm not even joking. We played for about 3 hours, and I woke up next day and my hamstring was like so sore. I was like, if I'd won that match, there's no way I could play today. So the level of physicality that Nadal brought was different, and I think we'll never see someone like that ever dominate in any sport. You know, I'm not talking just in tennis. I think we'll never see someone dominate on a surface or have that period of like, no one believed they could win.
Do you think punters understand the level of punishment that goes through the body? There's that book, isn't it? It's called The Body Keeps the Score. Yeah. Right? But I remember Andy Murray, I think he lost 9 of his 10 toenails when he won his first major. I mean, there's a punishment on the body involved in playing Nadal on clay.
Well, as you said, Andy Murray is someone that, you know, he's probably one of the best, you know, tennis players to ever play. He's probably in top 5 for me all time. And you look at now, he's got a metal hip. He's got, you know, he can barely walk without pain. So he's the proof in the pudding. He's someone that did everything right, ticked every box. You know, barely drunk, did all the fitness, did all the right things. And now he's at the end of his career, he struggles to walk. So
amazing, isn't it?
Ali came in today after his 555-mile cycle.
Dear me, that was
like
tough.
John Wayne with a stone in his shoe.
I feel I'm embarrassed to say that was tough after what these boys go through.
Yeah.
But I think Andy not lose 5 Australian Open finals as well?
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of Wimbledon. he had a different credit. I can remember him winning the US Open.
Yeah.
I remember him because it was later at night.
And
I remember watching it in the house. Fantastic. I mean, he
was right there.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable sportsman.
Without Novak, Federer and Nadal, Andy Murray would be the greatest tennis player to ever play.
And it's the resilience Ali mentions to come back from that kind of defeat, because, you know, you talked about it as well. Wimbledon final. I think you said to me that there isn't a day goes by where you don't replay a little bit of it in your head. Is that something that you can eventually see yourself? I mean, you've got another couple of seasons to give it a crack, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I think, you know, as long as, you know, if I make another final and I win one, great. But it's something, every time I step on the court, I think about that one match. You know, it's like everything I ever worked for was in that match. And if you win Wimbledon, your tennis immortality, no one can tell me anything ever again. But I still have to deal with all the still.
See that match, when you get into that match against one of the greats, arguably the greatest, I think he's still, he needs one more to, he's joint with Margaret Court at the moment.
He's 24,
Right, so he needs one more. What's your psyche? I mean, is there any doubt you think, I'm playing the best in the business here, or do you try and...
Well, I'd beaten him twice beforehand.
I know that.
So I'd won 5 sets in a row, and I didn't even think about that. I don't know why. I should have been walking past him like arrogantly saying, this guy can't even win a set.
Did you not kick his bottles over though?
No, that was against Nadal. But I'd won 5 sets in a row against Novak Djokovic, and I don't know what happened. An hour and a half went by, and I was down 2-1. I was like, what's happened? Like I was in complete control, but it's not. He's not that bad. He's a pretty good tennis player. So.
And you've beaten all of those 4 great players you mentioned. Yeah. It's a good title to have that as well, isn't it? Not many. How many have done that in the modern
I think
game?
there might be like 17 or 18 all time that have done it.
I wonder if it's the same for you, Ali. Is there a game that is still in the back of your mind, particularly for Scotland? I mean, sorry to mention it, but Euro '96.
Aye, that's the one.
Because you were battering
England.
The one.
That's
sorry
the
for
one.
our English listeners.
That's definitely the one. I don't know. It's the old, if you're auntie, all this carry on and be your uncle, the whole. But the missed penalty to Gary, my roommate. And there's kind of no a day goes by you don't think about that as well. Gary struck the penalty, Seaman made a great save, and the rest was history. Gascoigne goes up and scores that great goal. But we honestly believe that if the penalty goes in, we actually win the game. But hey, but it's amazing. You go back, it's still it eats away.
So there's no hope for me then.
There's no hope.
I appreciate
because I'm going to tell you, man, that was 30 years ago, so there's no hope.
Where do you think that stands, though, Ali? Is a Wimbledon final is to get that far in any kind of sport? That's a huge achievement for this
It's
man,
absolutely phenomenal. We were there today and watching that level of talent, and as Nick correctly says, we've arguably seen, and I remember reading, I read Agassi's book, I loved Agassi's book, and I remember watching Agassi get an interview, and he said the exact same as Nick. He says if Andy Murray played in a different era, he'd be one of the greatest players that ever. I mean, he still is one of the greatest players of the game. But he can argue. You can argue he's a little bit unlucky to play in that era. But if you asked him, I bet he'd just say it was an absolute joy and a privilege to play in that era with those guys. I mean, some of the finals, some of the entertainment he's given us Scots boys in particular.
Unreal.
It's amazing.
Do you know, Ali, one thing I was going to say to you as well is that they're special moments to watch, but you had your teammates around you to enjoy it with,
Correct.
right? But the psychology of being on your own for 4 or 5 hours, that's a different level, isn't it? Do you think you could have done that? You probably got it as a professional athlete, but it's a different thing.
It's a different psyche. Different psyche. And that question, I love. That's why I love watching the Ryder Cup, for example. I love watching the responsibility that golfers seem to have, not wanting to let anybody else down.
Yeah.
You know, and it must be the same in the tennis international tournaments as well. You represent your nation.
Yeah.
You know, there's a different kind of responsibility.
There is,
You don't want to let you don't want to let anybody else down. You're in there to win it for yourself normally in a tournament, but all of a sudden you represent your nation, represent everyone in the country. It's a different kind of pressure.
Certainly is.
Great.
Right, before we wrap then, boys, Nick, tomorrow looking ahead, anything you'd like to pick out for the men's singles?
Let's have a look here. Let's go down.
I think they might have disappeared. They've gone.
They've gone. Well, we've got. I've got two here. The two matches that I've got here is. I think Tommy Paul probably. Can we have more?
Berrettini's playing tomorrow as well.
I'm not sure.
They've all disappeared off that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've all disappeared off that. Okay. When does Jack play, by the way?
He'll play tomorrow. Yeah.
So again, for anybody who's not too familiar with Jack, what do you expect? Like you say, big, powerful left-hander.
Yeah, I think that the solution for Jack to really compete for one of these Grand Slams is making sure the job gets done quite early in the first couple rounds. You don't want to be out on court for 3-4 hours in the earlier rounds and take a physical toll, especially when guys like Alcaraz and Sinner in the draw, you want to get off the court as quick as
and
possible.
He's struggled a bit with that, hasn't he? He's been sick on.
I was actually calling that match, when he was vomiting on the court against Sinner, and that was something that I'd never really seen before. Yeah. So, if he's got over those physical struggles, that would be my advice to him, is try and deal with these earlier rounds in pretty quick fashion, and then just prepare.
Get them through quick. Right, so go on, Nick. Pick us a couple out tomorrow then. So Ali can have a little flutter.
Yes. So I can put a couple of my hard-earned pounds on you.
We talked about we've got wages, about 140 grand.
We've got a bit of a British battle, Dan Evans and Jay Clark. That's an interesting one because, Dan Evans was in the press conference the other day and he got emotional.
He did, didn't he? Saw it.
Yeah, and that's it pretty close to me because I was really good friends with Dan Evans, through my career, and he always had the question mark over his head. Does he love tennis? Does he give enough to the game? And to see him emotional like that. Yeah. And as you said, letting people down, that's been a big issue for him. So I think that kind of answers all the questions, as in, like, he does care and he wants to have good results. So, playing another Brit, Jay Clark, I'm assuming got a wild card, into the tournament. So that's a bit of a leveler. You never want to play a good mate or someone that plays for the same country. It's going to be an interesting one, that one there, probably.
Good stuff. Any final thoughts from you, Alistair?
Listen, I'll be tuned in for the next 2 weeks. I can tell you, Gordon, thoroughly enjoyed today. It was just, as I said earlier, it's a marvellous spectacle. It was great to go there. The crowd were fantastic. But more importantly, the tennis was brilliant. It's great. Brilliant.
And Ali, you're on the wireless in the morning.
I'm on the old-fashioned wireless tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, talkSPORT with Jeff.
Bed by 7:30?
I'm not sure you two will be up listening to it, but I'll guess you might not be.
Bed by 7:30, Alistair?
Maybe.
Sensible.
Now come to the Dog and Fox. Have a
He doesn't need that kind of invitation.
I don't need that encouragement, believe me.
Ali, it's great to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks.
Brilliant to see you.
Thanks very much. Lovely to see you.
Nick Kyrgios, great to see you. We're off to the pub next. You're watching Wimbledon Unfiltered with Nick Kyrgios in partnership with Good Trouble and talkSPORT. We'll be back tomorrow. Come and join us then.